You are listening to episode 112, How to Raise a Child with a Fire to Succeed Who is Also Not Afraid of Failure. Welcome to this week's episode. I have a returning guest. She has been on my podcast 2 times already, and this is her 3rd time. I am welcoming Katherine Sellery. She is a 3-time TEDx speaker who has taught thousands of parents the conscious parenting revolution to help them raise resilient, considerate, centered, and empowered kids who know their inner voice and honor it. And I am talking to her today about how we can raise a child with a strong work ethic who is still not afraid of failure. Thank you so much for joining me today, Katherine.
I am so excited to be here. I mean, this is such a great topic. I know you and I were kind of like playing around with this previously, and I really want to dive in.
I'm so excited. So you have been on the podcast twice. So for anyone who's listening to this episode, but not the other episodes, we recorded episode 45, which was how to be a more conscious parent and why it's important, and episode 93, why it's okay to raise kids who are self-centered. But it was after episode 45 that I stopped the recording and talked to Katherine about this topic. And I said, I need you to come back on this podcast so we can discuss this. And I want to explain to my listeners where this topic comes from. So I have always seen, and I personally feel it, I think my husband feels it, a lot of my peers who are high succeeding in, a career like medicine, for example. I have a lot of colleagues where we have been raised in that mentality that you're going to work hard and you're going to work hard and you're going to succeed and succeed. But also how to balance that with being okay with failure. Because it wasn't until I got to college and I failed where I actually had to learn to be okay with failure. And up until then, it was you do this, you get good grades, you're going to get an A. And if you get a B, if you get a C, that's not great. And how can you put that, like lack of a better term, the fire under the ass of someone to succeed and work hard, but also balance it with, hey, take it easy sometimes. Your work ethic is not the only thing that defines you. And that's kind of what this conversation is going to be about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so excellent. So, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is, and I think we've talked about this before, but if not, I think it's where I want to start. And that's really the difference between praising and acknowledging your children.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about praise, we're really talking about, approving of my standards, and then I'm going to give you praise. When you acknowledge your children, you're teaching them to evaluate their own efforts. So we can put that kind of like stake in the ground because I think it's a cornerstone to the larger conversation. So how do we create children that are self-directed rather than socially prescribed looking for approval? Mm-hmm. So one is the healthy form of perfectionism and one is the dysfunctional form of perfectionism. So we're looking for children who are self-starters, have that little fire under their belly, and are doing it because it's satisfying to them. They have healthy self-esteem. They're looking for challenges. They persist. They don't really get discouraged because they believe in themselves and they value being skilled. And with that energy from within, they seek mastery. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest questions parents have is, are there certain things that I am saying or doing as a parent that makes it not self-directed? So some examples of what you just mentioned in terms of how we can talk to our children so that they feel more self-directed and acknowledging what they're capable of versus external praise that we're giving to them.
Right. So when you look at praise, the praise is all about my judgment of you or your effort. I usually do it in public, or I can do it in public, either to amplify what you've done so that you feel even bigger and puffed up and look how great everybody looks at me and thinks I'm doing so well. And it completely orients the mind of the child to, what do other people think of me? Are they thinking I'm great or not? Do I feel like I've met their approval? And that's the world of praise. It keeps the mind of the child completely focused on the external world and trying to be sure that they're enough for other people to continue to praise them. And then they'll feel good about themselves. Acknowledgement teaches children to evaluate their own efforts. It gives our opinion. And it's a personal event. It doesn't show children up in public or compare them to each other. Mm-hmm. So, these are radically different. And most parents, unfortunately, without knowing it, are in the world of praise.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, absolutely. And even I have a 2-year-old, so I think about how we kind of look at praise in the toddler years, which is early, but also how people talk about their children as they get older. And then how, let's be honest, how grandparents talk about their grandkids, or how the
Yes.
grandparents talk about their children, meaning, my own parents, how they speak about us. I mean, it just feels like a cycle of never ending praise, which, yes, it feels good to feel praise. I mean, I do feel like, oh, I think my parents proud of me, but it's how that is issued. Like, where is that coming from? Where is that praise? And what is the core source of that praise? I think is important for a parent to remember when they are praising or versus acknowledging their child.
Well, and there's a big difference. So
Mm-hmm.
praise is going to say things like, good job, great work, that's great. You're such a good girl. You always
Yes.
listen to me. Or, you're so clever. Or something like, I'm proud of you. Or things like, you make me so happy. All of these are dangerous. Every
Mm-hmm.
single one of them is about how other people think about you. And they orient that child to wanting to get more of your praise in order to be in your good graces. Where the acknowledgement piece is really just about, I appreciate you. Thank you. I'm grateful. I admire your work. Did you know you could do it? It it takes the child away from what other people think, and it helps them to feel like, well, how do I feel about that when I do those actually, I feel really good about myself. Oh yeah. It's back to touching base within and helping a child to learn how to do that.
Oh, yeah. And I feel like it is so important to do. And I do feel that parents forget, or maybe they just get caught up in what they were raised to do, right? Like we talked about the cycles that it happened to
Sure.
them. So then they feel like they end up doing it without even realize. Do you work with parents on how to break that cycle if they were used to, in that moment? If
Mm,
they're about to say, something, I feel like some parents feel overwhelmed that, oh, I'm trying to say the right thing all the
yeah.
time, and then they feel stressed that, oh, did I say the right thing or did I
Yeah.
not? And that can be stressful for a parent. What would you tell those parents who feel like, wait, I say those things? How would you kind of
Yeah.
educate and motivate them to kind of change the ways that they've been discussing with with their children?
Well, first of all, everybody's been raised that way. So there's
Yes.
no, like shame in it. It's just a matter of, oh, wow, can I up my game? Can I do the parenting 2.0? So it does take practice, and you
Hmm.
have to actually break the habit. So I would say that what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to become more focused and aware of the way that you speak, and become more conscious. Like the conscious parenting revolution is all about this, becoming more conscious of the messages that are embedded in the way that you communicate.
Very important. A lot of the reason I wanted to record this episode was what I mentioned earlier, is that I do feel like, especially I'm going to speak about Indian community, like, because I'm in it, I'm
Sure.
I'm Indian American. A lot of us were raised with that work ethic of you're going to work hard, and a lot of us, not every one of us, tended to go towards careers that were deemed to be socially um,
Prestigious.
exactly, socially prestigious. So, doctors, lawyers, business people, like you tended to gravitate towards those things. Pharmacists, I throw all of this in here, dentists, because socially, this was what was kind of looked at as prestigious, like you said.
Yeah.
And there's two things that I saw happen. Some people, like myself, I'll be honest, some people genuinely liked the career and specialty that they chose. Like,
Mhm.
I love what I do because I get to do this, the parenting, it,
Yeah.
like all that stuff, right? I love the parenting. I love the health and wellness. I do. Do I want to work and see 50 patients a day? Probably not, but it's all that's for a different podcast episode. But
Sure.
it came from, what do I want to do? I
Mhm.
see a lot of other people who ended up going into the careers because, like you said, they thought that this was what their
Somebody
parent
else wanted
wanted.
for them.
This was what
Mhm.
society wanted, and then they're in like a midlife crisis. They're like,
Mhm.
lack of a better word, they're just like, I'm lost. I don't want to do this with my life. I'm not happy. And that
Mm.
is what I want us to
Yeah,
prevent.
we
I
don't want
want,
that to
yeah.
that's a cycle that we don't want to repeat. So, if you're looking, to move from the praise world
Hmm.
to the acknowledgement world, and it all ties back into what you were speaking about, I think really you were talking about self-motivation and how kids want to succeed and want to, take the world on because they believe in themselves, not because they're constantly focused on, am I enough for someone else? Will they believe in me? Will they continue to praise me? Or am I going to stop getting praised because I didn't do what they want? Then where will I be? Because I haven't developed self esteem. My esteem is resting on other people. right? So that
Yeah.
very dangerous place of always looking for the outer. So acknowledging your children is asking them how they feel about what they've achieved.
Hmm.
So you really have to go back to that center of, hey, are you pleased with that? What do you think about it? Are you happy with that? You're not even included in this, right? It's not like, I'm so, look at you, it's not, have you seen Johnny? It's not about your whole clan making Johnny feel great about Johnny. It's about you're helping him or her to be able to reflect and think about, well, am I pleased with that? Do I like that? How do I feel about this kind of stuff? You can do that by saying, you look really pleased. You seem so proud of yourself. You look delighted, things like that, which help them to, get a sense of what's going on. So you can ask them, how do you feel about what you achieved? You can
Hmm.
reflect it back with those nonverbal messages. You can even add your opinion. I agree with you. I think it's special too. And
Yeah.
then you can give some information, but you give it in the form of yourself saying, I and a verb. I admire, I respect,
Yes.
I value, I appreciate, I'm impressed that, things like that. So that they understand, like, you don't have to be neutral. You can have a value system and your values may be like, wow, I really admire that, and then it's back to congratulations and, hey, you did it, high five, look at that. And then there's a sense of, celebration with them, but it's not about the only time we celebrate is when you get A's. You're moving that ball down the field. Maybe he's a C student and he was a D student,
Hmm.
congratulations. That's so great, you know? And then you can always express your appreciation, but it's about focusing on the process. And I
Yeah.
think that's so key.
Oh, yes. The process is so important. And like you said, like little baby steps is still process, and like you
Mhm.
said, the D to the C. And, that is something that sometimes parents get, well, why are they not doing this? And why are they not doing that? And I think there's so many other factors to this. I mean, we talk about comparison to other people that plays a part of this. We talk about the people pleasing mentality that gets into this
Mhm.
as well, which you
Mhm.
alluded to also. And a lot of it is undoing a lot of that has been done to us, like we mentioned. And so I
Yeah.
want to talk about, the people pleasing mentality, what you said
Mhm.
about parents either bringing that onto their child. What are some ways that, if you were raised in a people pleasing home, which a lot
Mm.
of us were,
Mm.
how can we undo those cycles with our children and be more conscious as a parent in the way we talk to our children about, people pleasing?
Well, I think that, when we look at people pleasing behavior, it's rooted in this idea of praise versus acknowledgement. It's
Yes.
rooted in this idea of trying to get you to, be happy with me. So the key, I believe, really is learning how to translate your language away from praise into acknowledgement with sort of the things that we were just talking about a second ago,
Hmm.
but also realizing the implications of this for children's self-esteem and how it ties right back into motivation. So, we were talking earlier about this idea of a mastery versus a performance orientation. In the performance orientation, a child is either afraid to do something, so they avoid it because they don't think they'll be able to succeed. And if they don't succeed, then they don't want to have to feel like they've disappointed you.
Yes.
So they just avoid it completely, or they approach it and they continue to approach it as long as they think they can outdo others. But the minute they begin to realize that they can't outdo someone, then they stop doing it. So this is a kind of motivation that you set up. It's the performance orientation based on what other people think of you. And it turns into the avoidance and approach. And it's based in the fact that both of them have to do with a socially prescribed perfectionist mindset. And it's very fragile self-esteem. And in both cases, you avoid challenge if you don't feel like you're going to get to the prize. So you don't have that persistence. You get discouraged really easily. And it really only works if that external something is going to be there in order for you to feel like you are going to get the praise. And mastery orientation, which is the key here, is that self-referenced perfectionism where it's all about me not even noticing what other people are doing or saying,
Hmm.
but just being so in tune with yourself. So, if we go and help parents reignite their language and communication with their children based in this idea of supporting a child to know who they are, and that is then reflecting back to them, then they'll start to have a healthy self-esteem because they'll begin to realize, like, oh, wow, I did do that. I can do thoughtful things, or I am capable at certain things. And I may not be the best at everything, but I am really good at this one thing. And I'm really proud of myself. And it's not about, are other people proud of you too? Like that just doesn't even pop into the equation any longer. It's not where the mind of the child is located because they've now become, rooted in the self. They need some support getting rooted in the self. And, that's not about being, what I want to call it, spoiled or self-centered, but it's being rooted in the self. Where else would you root yourself?
Correct.
But a lot of us don't actually grow up with a strong sense of self because we're never really reflected back. We're always being directed. And so parents who do a lot of directing get in the way of the child being able to separate and individuate and to have their own mind.
This episode is brought to you by the New Mom Survival Guide, an online digital e-course and community created by me, a board-certified pediatrician and mom, to guide new mothers through their first year of motherhood. With modules on parenting, newborn sleep, newborn feeding, infant sleep, introduction to solids, development and play, teething, and safety. This is the one resource you will need to guide you and support you through your baby's first year. For more information, visit PedsDocTalk.com or visit the link in my show notes.
Going back into school age, as we've talked about in our prior episodes, we've discussed how downstream I like to go, meaning early in parenting. It's not just about, when they're older, but when you talk about school age children, like how we even approach schoolwork. I do believe, and I was raised in a household where my parents did not help me at all or very minimally with my schoolwork. It was on me to figure it out. And if I couldn't figure it out, I could ask them, but I would ask the teachers, but I had to struggle. And I do appreciate that. I do see a culture now of this helicoptering with you must do this and you have to do this. Did you figure out your timetables? Did you do this? And it's like, to some degree, I'm like, is this going to be an issue down the road? I mean, right now these kids are in school age, but I am concerned with our culture of wanting to helicopter schoolwork, our school age kids. And I think it's that whole culture, like we mentioned, of comparison and people pleasing and all of that is really rearing its ugly head in schoolwork. But do you see the same thing happening in this kind of modern parenting?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And, I agree with you that so many parents are so concerned about their kids' performance. I'm not sure if it's coming from worry.
Yeah.
Like they're worried that if they don't get involved, they won't figure it out, or they're worried that if they don't do well in elementary school or, first grade, that they're not going to be successful in life, that they're worried that other kids in the class are doing better than their kids. I mean, there are all kinds of reasons. And I think all of those are actually part of the puzzle. So I think each one of those are puzzle pieces. And it takes a lot of courage to believe so much in your child that you believe that they'll find their way and to give them the space to be able to do that. But having said that, I do think we need to also be aware of all the dynamics that are going on that could be getting in the way of that. And again, we're back to, have we contributed accidentally by focusing the mind of the child on what other people are doing so that it could begin to affect a child's self-esteem to see someone else outperforming them in class if they've learned that it's all about outperforming in order to feel good about myself. Right. So, and I think a lot of parents have that outperforming mindset. You got to outperform somebody to feel good about yourself, right? They're coming from that place. So a child who isn't coming from that place, they believe they need to train them to come from that place. Because if they don't come from that place, it won't be good for them. When the truth couldn't be further from the truth in reality. However, I understand the concern because we want our children to be successful in life and all the rest of it. But, developmentally normal, there's a big sort of like, area of what is all developmentally normal. And for one kid, they're early readers. For another one, they're late readers. All of that is within developmentally normal until it's not. And, they may be outliers in one direction or the other, but it can be a big, literally a multi-age gap for kids. Some could be reading at 4, others could be reading at 6. Both are fine. Nothing to worry about.
Exactly. And I think about child development a lot, and I do focus more on that early first 5 years on my platform, but it's not because of the kid. It's because of the mentality the parent needs to have in those first 5 years that'll help them as they even get older, right? The mentality of what we're talking about. And one thing that just came up, and I think we've spoken about this on a prior episode, I can't remember if it was with you, is just an obsession with extra work for children. Like,
Oh
like,
God.
you know, like Kumon. Like,
Yes.
I'm not against Kumon if a child actually wants to do Kumon. Like, I'm not
Yes.
against it. Kumon, for anyone who's not familiar, is an extracurricular program for basically learning math and reading skills for a young child. But it becomes a parental, I need my kid to do Kumon. Maybe your kid wants to play soccer. Maybe your kid wants to run and play. Like, maybe your kid wants to build Legos. I mean, that is also important for a child, right? Like, I think we create these
So true.
expectations of, well, this is what success is. Success is Kumon because math and reading skills are what gets you successful. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I am pretty good at math and reading skills, but what's better is life skills. What better is cognitive skills. What's better is learning how to speak to people. What's better is knowing financial skills and how to be smart with money in the future. You know what I mean? Like, we've set so much expectation and so much value on things that I also don't believe should be truly highly valued for our children. Is it the educational system? What is it? I don't know what's causing parents to feel the need that their kid has to be in Kumon. Someone asked me, when am I going to start my child in Kumon? And my son's 2. And I looked at them and I turned to my husband. I'm like, look, I am not putting him in Kumon unless it's something that he says to me one day. Ryan says to me, hey, Mom,
I really want to do
I really
Kumon.
would like to do Kumon. And I'm going to ask him, well, why do you want to do Kumon? Well, because I think I really would like that extra, like, to me,
Yeah.
I don't feel the need especially at 2 years old for him to.
But I'm glad you're bringing it up. And I think
that.
what happens is that, you know, parents do see other parents doing things.
Yes.
And then they start to panic. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. You know, so-and-so's doing this and they're going to be so far ahead of our child. And we've got to get our kid in this too, because, you know, otherwise they're going to fall behind. And it's that whole like freak out that can happen because your child isn't doing the thing that everybody else is doing. And I agree with you that, you know, kids who need Kumon are kids that are behind. Kids who need Kumon either, you know, and I'm not sure they need Kumon, but something's going on.
Correct.
In a child's life that's getting in the way of them acquiring the skills as quickly as their peer group. And so it might be cause for Kumon, or it might be cause for another type of intervention, or it may just be that this is a child who's going to develop these skills a little bit later. And it's not, you know, anything to worry about. It could be that they're signaling something about that child's learning style.
Right.
And this is a child who learns differently, and therefore they're going to need a different type of teaching approach. I mean, all good things to look at. So, you know, I think it's worthwhile for us to go, okay, well, maybe there's some good information here. I think the main thing is for most parents, they just get so worried.
Yes.
They just fall into that worry thing. And this is where I like to orient parents back to the here and now. So the worry comes from thinking about the future. Oh my God, and that fixation on the future. So the future time orientation is actually one of the things we talk about in my 90-day parenting reset, is we really spend a lot of time talking about, you know, here and now is really like the only place for you to be with regard to your child. If you start thinking about, oh, what are they going to become? Or, you know, how are they going to make a living and all this kind of stuff based on what's going on with your 4-year-old today, you're way out of line.
Yeah.
And because you're thinking about the future so much and future orientation, that actually is what brings up those feelings of worry. So, you know, it's because my mind is in the future that I'm so worried. If I were here right now with my child, working with what we've got in front of us, chances are you wouldn't have those kinds of feelings. So it's the discipline not to allow yourself to go drifting off into what really is make-believe land, because nobody really knows what the skills of tomorrow and what's going to be needed really are. And so just bringing yourself back, taking a deep breath. Everybody needs to take a deep breath a lot.
Yes.
Yeah, right. You know,
let's all do that right now, everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Make that sound, make that grunting sound when it comes out. It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. We do need to let go
So
of
good.
expectations so much. I agree with you.
Yeah. So this is, you know, the tendency of the mind. And if we become aware of the tendency of the mind, that it likes to hang out in the future, and therefore it brings with that this crop of fear, anxiety, and worry, then maybe we should have the discipline not to let our minds hang out in the future. And we know that we can't tell our minds, stop hanging out in the future, and get it to stop doing that. All we can do is reconnect to the breath. and recognize that that's what brings us back to the here and the now.
And reconnecting with the breath. And we've talked about this. I mean, it's also when you're getting into those anxiety moments or things like reframing, like what I do a lot of, and it's actually really helped me, is when I'm feeling worried about something during the day. And it happens. Anxiety, remember, we can do a whole other episode about anxiety, but anxiety is our protective mechanism that we've created to keep everyone safe. But sometimes it gets out of proportion to what's healthy. But when you are thinking about your child not succeeding, or you're thinking about your child not being as good at math or reading, I want you to write that down and also tell yourself and reframe it and say, what is my kid good at? What is my kid really good at right now? And like I said, like when I look at my son, like he is not going to be amazing at everything. Like he's really great at certain things, but listen, that's how we are as adults. I think we expect ourselves, even as parents and moms, to be great at everything. I have to be a good cook, and then I have to be good at coming up with activities and this. And I'm like, whoa. You don't have enough hours in the day, nor should you have the expectation that you should be great at everything. I am good at being funny with my son. I am good at doing all the goofy things. I am not a great cook. I am not good at coming up with innovative play ideas. I keep it very simple, but it's what brings me joy. And it's also what I want Ryan to learn, right? That, hey, you don't have to be great at everything. Like you can actually just be good at certain things, and you may not like that thing that mommy likes. Like I really may love you to do something, but that's because me. Like, why am I forcing that on you if that's not something you like? It's in the grand scheme of things. Like you said, if your child's not enjoying something, it's that balance of, hey, maybe we need to reevaluate here. And what is this end goal here? What am I looking in the future? What do I think that playing soccer or being in this sport, do I think they're going to be an Olympic athlete? Do I think that they're going to get a scholarship? I mean, what are you expecting for the future? Because you need to come back into the now. And how is your kid feeling in these moments? And like you said, the acknowledgement of them and not what you are trying to put onto them from external praise.
Yeah, it's also true. And I think that, this is where parents and the support we can give to parents is just to trust yourself.
Yeah.
That enough is not anybody else's determining of what enough is. And I know that we want our children to explore a lot of different things, and we want them to be in a lot of different things. And kids, I hear this all the time, parents will try to get their kids enrolled in all sorts of activities, and they'll say, yeah, sure, mom, I want to do soccer, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. And then shortly thereafter, they may say, I don't want to go. No, I'd rather stay home. And parents, of course, are like, oh my God, I just spent $1,500 signing you up for Pee Wee soccer. And you're going to go. And, this whole thing, and it becomes about forcing them to go do something that they didn't really want to do. And I find that it's really helpful on the front end for parents to have conversations with their kids about, look, this may not be fun every time. And it might be, kind of good to just get a feel for it. Would you be willing to make that commitment for this 6-week term? And when it's not so much fun and it's hard to go anyway, just because we paid for it. And, you're the one who creates value, and help your children recognize that they're the ones who create value. So that's a really important lesson, is that kids begin to go, oh, I create the value. I'm the one who's going to make this work really well for me or not. And that can just change everything if they begin to have that mindset of other people don't create value for me. I'm the one who creates the value.
Oh, and it's so powerful. If every parent could just listen to this and just feel that, how valuable that last phrase was. I mean, that's just like the actual perfect final message. Catherine, thank you so much for this conversation.
So great. I always leave feeling like, but we just got started.
I know. I love, and this is why I love having you on, because of course I just really, what you say all really resonates with me. And it's always nice speaking to other people in the parenting space who understand that, obviously, who get that desire to want to teach parents that, hey, we need to work on a lot of things. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy, but it means that it's actually going to really help you find peace in your life and also your child. I mean, I think, like you said, we put way too much pressure on ourselves, which trickles down to our children. And I don't want another generation to keep going through that. There is a way to raise a kid, like we talked about in this episode, who has that internal self-directed desire to succeed. But like you said, it's coming from them. It's coming from them saying, I can do this. I want to do this. And that is such a beautiful thing to see a child want to do. Do you have another final message for everyone listening today? I know you already had some amazing pearls, but what would be your final message?
The message I love to just leave with parents is see your children beautiful. So children deserve our compassion the most when they appear to deserve it the least. So whenever you've got those meltdowns happening, if you can step back and see it as a child drowning as opposed to bad behavior, that would just shift your ability to see them with those compassionate, loving eyes. Because that's the other thing that I really love to help people recognize, is that how I see you and how I hear you is up to me.
Yeah.
And so I'm the one who's bringing the evaluation. I'm the one who's bringing the judgment toward anything I see or hear. So, Krishnamurti said, observation without evaluation is the highest form of human intelligence. So can we become the observers, stop the judging of the behaviors as good, bad, right, wrong, and just be curious about the things that we want to call bad behavior and punish, instead shift away from that mindset and look at it curiosity. Wow, what's going on? What's going on that's underneath that? Because everything else is a presenting problem. And we've got to shift our focus from the presentation to the underlying unmet need.
Oh, Katherine, thank you so much. Well, I know I did an introduction, but where can everyone find you? Again, I will put this all in my show notes, but just if anyone wants, obviously, I know you have your course and your program, so tell me more about where people can find you.
Yeah, thank you. So it's consciousparentingrevolution.com is the website. And if you go there, I have actually an opt-in needs assessment analysis right now, which is free. People can just go take it and see if they're meeting their needs or not, their children are meeting their needs or not. And if we have the paradigm of emotions and actions come from needs being met or unmet, our understanding of whether they are meeting or not meeting their children's needs is absolutely crucial.
And again, if you have not already, make sure you listen to episode 45 and episode 93. Katherine is officially the most popular guest on my podcast in that I've had her the most often. Yay! So 3 episodes. I mean, as you can tell, I invite people back who I really love. I mean, there's so many people I would love to invite back, but anytime I have a parenting topic that I'm like, I need to really talk about this with someone else, I email her and I'm like, can you talk about this with me? And so this is how this episode happened. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Mona. It's been great.
Thank you for tuning in for this week's episode. As always, please leave a review. Share this episode with a friend. Share it on your social media. Make sure to follow me at PedsDocTalk on Instagram and subscribe to my YouTube channel, PedsDocTalk TV. We'll talk to you soon.